I'll answer the question. You want answers?
I think I'm entitled.
You want answers?
I want the truth!
You can't handle the truth!
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes. It's time for the latest episode of It's Complicated, where myself and Gevian Dargan get together. We talk about, hot button issues, just interesting conversations, get a little discourse going. Today, we're going to talk about the truth about college. And here with me, obviously, is the man behind Animated Concepts, former assistant editor at Milestone Comics. He's just a good guy. That's how I describe Gevian. How you doing, Gevian?
Oh, feeling groovy and appreciate that very light compliment. Yeah, I like to think so myself, but don't ask my wife and kids about that.
Well, speaking of wife and kids, I've got three little ones myself. Your girls, I believe, are a little bit older. I think you have a stepson in there as well. We got to be thinking about these things about college and stuff, and college has gotten kind of weird. Like when I was younger, I remember a lot of adults would go to night school. They would work during the day, and if they wanted to get another degree, they would go to night school. Yep. Or if you're going to college, you got another a full-time job, so you could take as little loans as possible. But by the time it was time for me to go to college, if I was going to do that, the loan system had changed a little bit, and people stopped working at the same time that they were going to school, and it almost became a requirement in the eyes of parents, if not the faculty at the school level themselves, that all kids need to go to college. Me personally, I was in a weird situation in my home life. By the time when I was 17, I signed up for the military. When I was 18, I graduated. I went to boot camp, and I was on my journey. The cool thing about the military is essentially once you're in, and you get your first certifications and all that stuff, and you're working, even though you don't make a lot of money, you're essentially on scholarship. You get a tuition assistance up to a certain amount of money per semester and stuff like that. So you can join the military and go to school. But there's this idea, and I'm sure that you're hearing it as your children are older, that everybody needs to go to college. It doesn't matter what you want to do. And if you don't know what you want to do, then you definitely don't need to go to college and figure it out. I disagree.
Yeah. No, and I also disagree, because I disagree with the extremity of it, which is no matter what you do. And I think that's the problem with it, because it's not you're not knocking higher education. You're not saying that the college provides no benefit whatsoever, but it has to be looked at or explored in terms of what is it that you want to do with life. And some people will say that if your kid doesn't really know what they want to do, you don't want them finding out at the college at that expense. You don't
want to pay for 2 years of university, starting up a major, and then figure out that they never want to do that in their life.
Exactly. And some people, it's a question of, the thing that you want to do, based on the income that you'll make, if you project it out 5 or 10 years, it's not the cost of going to college to get that education doesn't justify it. Then it's just a question of, even if you say, yeah, I do want to go to college, it's about, how do you put the financing together? It's like, in some cases, look, man, don't go unless you get a 4-year ride, or if you go the first 2 years at your local city college, because it's pretty much going to be the same sort of liberal arts, humanities
basics.
Curriculum in the first place. Yeah, the basics, and then you're not going to get into your specialty until the last 2 years to do that. I wish I had been working at the video store I was working at before I went to college. So all those rich people who ended up telling me that, I would have known that in the first place, because they sent all their kids back in New York to SUNY before they send them off to Harvard, Yale, or whatever it is, once they figure out what they want to do. So it's just like when I was 17 and 16, 17 doing that, and I can say my parents weren't well versed in how college finances should work. I got myself locked into a lifetime deal that if I had to do it all over again, I would do it different. I'm not saying that I would have gone to college, but I definitely would have looked at the financing piece different. And in some cases, the cost of college, maybe you can't afford to go to night school and work during the day and get your degree in a meaningful amount of time. But it's it is. I think what happens is that we've been sold, especially those Gen X, because there's a thing in the Black community about the talented 10th. Everybody has to go to college to become that thing. And there's real statistical information that shows you do make more money with a college degree than without, for the most part, on average. But the simple fact of the matter is that going to college is a business decision. It is not you're a decent human being decision. And I think it's
not a discovery of yourself.
Yeah, exactly. It's not you're paying.
You're investing in your own self. In your skill set.
yourself. And just like any other investment you make in life, you have to be smart about how you invest. You have to be able to say, am I risking money that I can afford to lose? Because say if you graduate in the year 2008, and you can't control that, but are you risking money you can afford to lose? So I think it has to be looked at more as an investment from an investment or business lens than it does in terms of, well, you're going to college no matter what because that's what's supposed to be done because it's good for you no matter what. Because it's not necessarily good. It's not necessarily good for you.
So Gervais, I'm a little bit younger than you, but we're about the same age. I'm personally like pretty much debt free. I've got a little tiny bit of debt, but I have no school debt. But there are people our age that are still sitting under a mountain of college debt while they've been working and they can't get out from under it because the major that they chose to pursue didn't set them up on a path to basically make enough compensation to get themselves out of it. And now a lot of people are kind of calling for, well, we need to, basically wipe out these loans. We need to forgive them all. I say no. You entered into that agreement. You signed for that debt. That is your debt. It's not, the government doesn't have money. The government has the people's money. And other people should not have to pay for you to go to college so you could get a degree that did not set you up to be a doctor or a lawyer or maybe even an accountant or some type of a job where that skill requires you to have a degree just to enter the job force. There are a lot of things out there. And a lot of people chose to go to school, to look into some liberal arts degrees, maybe become an English major. Well, what are you going to do when you're an English major? Are you going to be an English professor? Because if you just want to be a writer, you can probably learn how to do that without going to college. Yeah.
Look, and I'll say this, so not to sound contradictory or hypocritical after one of the other videos we did, but I will say this. I have no problem with the people who are in the anti-forgiveness crowd. The reason why you will see on social media, if you look way back, I've been for the student loan forgiveness, is because of the way I've seen the government handle businesses who basically have made stupid mistakes, have made dumb decisions, and somehow magically get to keep their companies and get bailed out after the fact. And I consider that forgiveness, especially the 2008 financial crisis. I'm no huge fan of it. Most of the banks that are around now shouldn't exist as a result of that. As a result of that crisis,
but
that's okay.
Entire industries that shouldn't be around. Yeah, almost the airline industry as we know it should exist.
Automobile industry, bunch of them. So free market, rest in peace, 2008. Now, I haven't said that. The one thing I will advocate for in terms of student loans is basically I should be given back the right to discharge my debt, student loan debt, just like everybody else does when they have a debt, including business, homeowners, blah, 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 you name your person. That's the only thing I'm asking for. I don't need your forgiveness. I don't need your understanding. I don't need your whatever it is. But I want the ability to discharge my debt. That's right. I want my ability to discharge it in debt because I made a bad business decision X amount of years ago, just like Donald Trump made a bad business decision 6 times. And I want that. I'm not for being in this special class, this social caste of borrowers who can't discharge their debt in bankruptcy like everybody else does. So I'm paying my debt and I'm covering their debts too? No.
I'm not a big fan of
1976. Go ahead.
I'm not a big fan of the government getting involved in any type of debt or loans or securing loans for people. That's an agreement between a financial institution and an individual or a corporation, depending on what you're kind of doing. That the government got involved almost guaranteed that something like this was going to happen. And what happened once the government guaranteed these loans? What happened, Gervais? The universities raised the prices consistently.
That's right.
Did they ever provide a better level of education? Did they ever provide a better in college like experience? That stuff's still all being paid for by the donors or the alums that are going there. They're the ones paying for the buildings. But the colleges continuously raise the prices because they know they can gouge the students who are guaranteed these loans through the government.
Yeah, at the end of the day, what it comes down to is, and our good friends of the government is there's some people, like, when they make really, really stupid financial decisions, they go, you know what? He's a nice guy. They're smart as a whip. He just made a mistake. Let's take care of him. For the rest of us, it's like, you know what? You're an idiot. You don't deserve that. You should pay every dime. And It's like, look, the simple fact of the matter is the government got involved. They lent a bunch of money. They didn't control it or make sure that those who were receiving the money involved in the process either kept it under control or provided a product that was in line with the money that people were borrowing to get. That's it. It's like, what is the benefit that someone's getting from going to a school to get a $100,000 loan when everybody will tell you after the fact, because they don't tell you before the fact, hey, you know what, you could have went to the community college down the street and gotten that same education for at least half the price. I'm telling you, you know this.
Do well,
you don't be able to. I tell you, we go to the system. They don't tell you that. What they say is, hey, look, come here. Come here. You want to go to college? Here, we'll give you X amount of money to do this.
Yeah. You're not a student. You're a customer.
You're a customer, and so that's why when the society is basically telling you to go do something, but they're not giving you the right guidance in terms of how to take advantage of what could be an opportunity. That's where the breakdown occurs. And as far as the government being involved, I'm not against government involvement. I'm against bad government involvement. I'm for oversight,
but I'm not for
exactly.
I'm not for intervention.
Oh no, and I'll give you that. I'll give you that. But for me, I can't go with the against intervention crowd anymore because 2008 happened. So it's like, get over the fact there's no such thing as a free market. Get over the fact that the government actually does pick winners and losers. So it's like, I'm not going to tell anybody to be a sucker your whole life. It's like, you should want to be a winner too. We just had this whole great disaster where basically something called the CARES Act was passed, where all that happened was the greatest transfer of wealth to those who didn't need it in the history of mankind, much less the American enterprise. It's terrible.
This is another thing that happened when we talk about the prices for education went up, but the services never improved. There's another thing that happened because the supply and demand changed. There was a greater demand for college education than there was a supply. There were people that wanted to do things in life where there are no college programs for them because you didn't need it to do that. So you had universities, even state universities, invent degrees to meet the demand. Like, oh, you don't want to do anything, real with your life as far as doing something as far as vocation. You want to study gender studies. We'll make a degree, even though we know in the future that degree that you're getting these loans for will essentially, you're going to have to start into another avenue at an entry level position. Your degree will benefit you in no way whatsoever, other than you can say that you had a degree, but literally everybody else in your generation already has a degree as well. They started making up programs.
Yeah, look, there is a level of it being predatory. Because it's predatory because in this sense, you're dealing with anywhere from, it could be as young as 15 to 16 to 17-year-olds, where you ask them to, in probably the first time in their life, to make one of the biggest financial decisions that they're ever going to make. And none of us, not one of us, can say that unless you want to say their parents knew better, and sometimes your parents don't know better, that you're going to basically hog tie somebody for almost the rest of their lives. And the way that student loans work, because they can't be discharged in bankruptcy, their children to a decision that you made over 30-something years ago. And it's like, if people think that's right and that's cool, okay. So that's like people like me says, when something like 2008 happens, don't give them banks a dime.
Absolutely not.
It's like,
I'm not
if I screw up and have to pay the ultimate price, you screw up, you pay the ultimate price. But since we didn't,
you wanted to abuse the system and give out loans and make and make funds out there that you knew were bogus to begin with. You need to pay the price, and that is dissolution of your company. You're no longer solved. Ninja. Congratulations.
No income, no job, no assets. It's $100,000. There was times when I would go out to there was times I try to go get a loan. They would tell you not credit worthy. And somebody in my family who I will not mention. I would do all my paperwork, get all my documentation out, and say, well, we just can't do this, Dargan. You got to hit the bricks. This one over here was getting like $200,000 to $300,000 lines of credit because he said when they set an application, it said household income. He just took he was living with my, well, I gave that part away. Living with the family. He just wrote down in the box all the added incomes of the family and submitted that as his sole income. And they didn't check the W-9, they didn't check the nothing. They just gave him this ridiculous amount, a lot of credit. And I'm sitting here going, oh, so I guess I'm supposed to be a sucker my whole life. What?
If he wanted to go, or maybe if that person rented an apartment and missed a month's of rent and then paid it back within 30 days, and the landlord just put it on his credit report, it said money owed $0, but it never left, it would still affect his credit score, and the bank would look at that.
They would look at that before they would actually check his income against a credit card application. It's crazy, and that's the environment that you come out of it. But going back to the whole college thing, that's what it is. Is that it's like Dave Chappelle even said his father, who was a college professor, when Dave, according to Dave, told him that he wanted to go into comedy, he says you don't need to go to college for that. Here's another one, and this is one some of us realize because it did get poo-pooed as occupations, that a lot of when you go to a trade school, you do an apprenticeship someplace, a lot of those occupations pay very nice salaries.
You don't need to go to college to be a plumber.
You don't need to agree to college to go to it. You get into I think like a trade union, you're doing an apprenticeship, or you go to trade school and get into it. You spend enough time, you build up your skill. And if the occupation does become something where it does require a college degree, then you do that as far as you getting a promotion. But in terms of
if your employer likes you, they'll pay for it. There's a program.
I do. So it's like, but people will not cop to that. They won't cop to it. But that was poo-pooed upon. Like, if you looked at the guy who was the superintendent or the janitor, whatever he's called, the janitor at your school, he probably made more money, had more benefits, had more houses. Those people you knew had 2 or 3 degrees that were busted their hump, and nothing they own is actually theirs, because if anything goes wrong, your assets will be seized to cover all your debts, particularly your college debt. It's, and again, not saying this is not don't go to college, kid, no matter what. No. What it is that sit down, actually say to yourself, hey, what am I going to, what am I going to, if I get this degree and I'm going to spend this amount of money, how much can I look to reasonably make once I come out of school? And how long, based on that, if I have to put, like, say, 20% of my income, if I could do that, towards paying that debt, how long is it going to take me to pay it off? And is it worth it? And I'll put it this way. I'll tell my sad story. I went to school for a visual arts degree. It's like, whatever. But my thing was I was going to go into advertising. And I knew in advertising, I could make as a starting salary $150,000 a year. I went to school, did all they were not supposed to do, was offered a job at Young and Rubicam, which is at then one of the top 4 advertising agencies in the globe. Started off at a nice $150,000. Went through the program, got the job offer, and then all of a sudden, rug pull. Never heard back from the lady again. The program I went through, they didn't know what the hell I was talking about, this and that. So, man, I had to go get a job, get some work done. So I am the outlier. I am not the rule, but I'm in the outlier. It's like, look, you can sit up there, make all the right decisions, actually think about it, go, let me do that, talk to people, consult, whatever it is, and you still can end up sitting with this mountain of debt or whatever it is through no fault of your own.
Absolutely,
so I figured it out. But
I just want people to realize you can't look at the system of college with the government intervention as a scam, depending on what you want to do. And you're right with trade schools.
I can't deny that.
At my high school, we had a vocation program starting your junior year. Basically, half the day you go to class for the first 3 hours, and then the rest of the time you would go and you would build like a house. You would go and work with a plumber, essentially as an apprenticeship on an approved company that had worked with the school. You could do things like precision cutting, like drafting. You could have like all these cool programs, and you would basically go do a 2-year apprenticeship for the second half of your school. It counted as your schoolwork. You would still graduate as long as you got all your basics and everything done. But then you've already got a 2-year relationship with a potential employer. And even if he's not looking for somebody, he knows people in the business. And at that point, hey, do I want to draft for the rest of my life? I know
no,
AutoCAD. I can do this.
We all realized shop left the schools about the same time. These other programs started coming in at college. It is not a coincidence, and that's why it's not a coincidence that about 10 years ago, you started hearing about all these public-private partnerships between corporations and high schools. Why? Because they don't have people that are taking those programs out. They don't have the skill, and they realize, I guess we should put something back in the schools where they can kind of learn this in the years before they can become eligible to work. We're going to do the 21st century version of shop, which is going to a shop class, which is going to call it a public-private partnership, where we come in and give the kids access to building the latest Ford vehicle. So we'll actually have some engineers and technicians that can do the work that we need to do when we come out.
We definitely have shop at my old high school, because I was in a little farming town, and basically what they would do in shop.
They did. We used to have
farmers would bring their equipment in if it was busted, and they would let the students fix it for them. It was free labor. They had all the equipment in the school.
Yeah, like we've said many times before, the beauty of being in Generation X is that you saw what it used to look like, and then you experienced all the scams that came along when it became, and now you're experiencing the outcomes of those scams. Back when you said, this is a scam back here, and it was like, maybe not today, but tomorrow, that's just going to play out. And then now you got to the point where it's played out. Now you got to the point it played out is due to the great disaster. Now you got people sitting around going, you know what? Now you can get a signing bonus for working at McDonald's, which I actually think is great to me because that's called irony. Now they're offering signing bonuses to work at Taco Bell. To me, to the comedian in me,
that's rich.
Me, it's like that's my best Popeye laugh.
I do want to say, if we do have students or prospective students, and they're like, you know what, I'm going to college. Good. I'm glad you're getting a higher education. Make sure you get a program that's going to set you up for success, where you can get some money off of this debt that you've taken, because you've taken a lot of risk by taking on the debt. But also think about which college you're going to go to. Is it really worth it to go across the country, pay out-of-state tuition fees, and also have to pay for your own living expenses? There's a decent college near where you are. I know it sucks to live with your parents, but if you can live there rent-free, that's going to take your debt down substantially. And you're going to pay in-state tuition fees. It's going to be you're going to set up much better after this. It almost doesn't, unless you're going to Harvard or Mizzou for journalism.
There you go. You hit it.
The degree, no matter what it says on the top, that's your qualification. It doesn't matter whether it says, Cal State Berkeley, depending on what you do.
And you're absolutely right. It's and this is becoming more and more conventional knowledge that unless you know you're going to be operating in a certain rarefied atmosphere or trying to aim for certain companies. Going to an Ivy League school is not a guarantee of success, depending on what your career is. It just isn't. The whole point is you go get a degree. So that means if you're here in Chicago, you go to Chicago State University. Some of their programs are top-notch, top-rated. Very easy to afford to go and do that if you have the time and the money to do so. That's what it is. And I will say this, the generation that's coming along now, I don't know, they're still considered millennial, but I know a few of them, and they're a lot more smarter, a lot more savvy.
The Zoomers are much more savvy.
Much more savvy than I ever was when it came to, much less just thinking about it. I'm more like a guy, when I went to get loans for college, I was kind of like a creator going to work for Action Lab. But it's like them days is over, son. But it's like, and my wife and I, we talked about it. We said that, look, unless the kid gets a full ride, unless these girls get a full ride someplace, it's like, yeah, man, welcome to Chicago State University. You're going to do 2 years there. You're going to know what you're doing before that. And then at least you get your associates when you come out of there. If you want to go work after that, fine. If you want to go for your 4 year, which depending on your career field, go ahead and finish, but you are not going to spend the amount of money or get into the amount of debt that your parents did. Our kids have to do and be better than us, and have to do and be better than us. So these Zoomers, I tip my hat to them. I said, you guys got it. You learned, you listened, you learned. The people in your lives, I would assume they told you and they trained you and got you thinking the right way about this. That they will not get themselves caught in this final trap that so many of us before them did. So good for them.
Like I said, I'll make fun of it some more. If you're in a gender studies program, you are being scammed. That
No, that's a
degree
scam.
is
I can
never
see
going to
that.
set you up for any success in any vocation. It's going to be essentially meaningless unless the qualification is you have to have a degree of some kind. Well, okay, then now you have a degree, but that's not going to pay a lot of money. Go out there, make sure that you're investing in yourself, and you're going to do something that's really going to pay off in the future. Also, I want to say this one, Gervais. This might surprise you because I am a Gen Xer and I'm a cynical a-hole. If you are going to go to college and you are your 4-year degree, go look at fraternities and sororities, specifically fraternities if you're a male. That is essentially networking for the rest of your lives. You're not just networking with the guys that you're in the fraternity with, and yeah, you're going to have fun and maybe do some keg stands. You'll have some wild stories, but you're also networking the parents of the other fraternity members and all their connections. Almost everybody that went to a decent school got into a fraternity. They all had badass starting jobs, and they didn't have to go out there and try and sell themselves. They were basically offered opportunities because they're part of the family.
No, dude, you ain't wrong. It's like, look, I said, I realized that I was not, I did not receive the proper training of how to look at how to engage and succeed in higher education life. When I looked at fraternities, I was like, look, I spent my whole life avoiding joining what would have been a gang or a stick up crew. I'm not going to walk into college and join another version of a gang. Stick up crew. And it's just like, it really is about when you don't know, when you don't know how to navigate or to work a system, you don't know. And you are at the mercy of that system if you don't know how to properly exploit it. And that's what you're talking about. And exploit, in a sense, is not a bad word. You have to know why you're doing something and what the risk is and what the reward is, what the purpose of it is. And so you're right. When it comes to fraternities, I know a few friends of mine who worked in fraternities, and it's a lot easier because you are making those connections, because you are working with the parents who run those organizations, who run those major corporations. They know you, they trust you. So much of it is not so much, as we now know, it's not what you know, which is the reason why college ends up in some sense being a scam. It's who you know, because it really is. I've gotten better and more lucrative jobs or opportunities because of the people whom I know than I have based on what I know. Because it's like, you can know a bunch of stuff, but if nobody knows you know it, who's gonna offer the job? And then people go, well, how did so-and-so get the job? Well, that's called networking and or failing upwards. Because some people get jobs not because they know what they're doing, but because they know the person that basically is the decision maker, the gatekeeper of that job, and it's like, and they like them. It's got nothing to do whether or not you have a job now. My dad worked for the city, and he used to say all the time, and that's when I realized, oh man, he said he would get applications from people, and he would basically look at the level of college education they had, and if they were smarter than him, he'd throw that joint in the trash. So that's what I learned when I started submitting resumes. So resumes, depending on what the job was, I would actually downplay my level of experience or my level of education or my work experience.
Write your resume for the job. Do not write it about your entire experience. Write it about your experience that directs you right into that job.
Because you will intimidate people.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you will either intimidate people or they'll realize, nah, man, I'm trying to run a certain kind of keeping it. We operating below the curve. We ain't trying to wreck the curve operation. This sucker ain't gonna do it. My dad would tell guys when they came with a job, if it got out of control, he said, I got two letters here for you. This letter here will help you to transfer over some other department. This way is your resignation letter. It's like, and these are the things that, much like money management in general, the real skills you need for life are not taught in high school. There's a bunch of stuff that should be taught in high school that would actually be impactful, including how you should, what it should be like, is college for you? That should be at least one semester in high school. Is college for you? Because you have to realize, what is it that you want to do? And because we think that having a degree is more important than somebody finding something that they're very passionate at doing and or skilled at doing, we kind of send kids out into the world in a sense where they're not going to succeed, because it might be a little bit harder for them. They might have to do a little bit more work to get the experience and get that. But when they get that experience, if they're diligent, if they're punctual, if they're diligent, if they're punctual, they have a work ethic, you will succeed at that. You will succeed at that. But and I'm not talking about, I don't really like studying. Oh, no, I ain't talking about that, bro. I'm not talking about you just don't want to do nothing. And when I say bro, I mean all bros, not just black bros. All bros, all sis. If that we ain't talking about that. We're not talking about people who don't have a work ethic, who aren't diligent, who aren't punctual, who aren't ambitious. I'm talking about if you know what you want to do in life, and it doesn't necessarily include a college degree. It's like go find a way to do that. Work for a not-for-profit, work for a company, apprentice for a company for a couple of months. Do that kind of thing. And then what'll happen is if college is something that becomes a requirement of your industry or your occupation, because it does, you'll have to go do the college anyway. So it's like, it's all about what am I trying to accomplish? What do I need to do to accomplish it? How much is it going to cost me? And if I spend that money, am I personally, am I financially, am I materially going to have a return on that investment? And if you can't say that, don't take that gender study course.
It's crazy. A lot of times, experience trumps education. Yes, depending on the job in the career field. If you go out of college or if you go out of high school and you enter into an entry level position into a company, into a career that you're interested in, and you look into it and you're like, well, maybe college, that degree isn't going to bump the pay up enough. By the time your competitors, your peers graduate and are ready to enter the job field, you've got 4 years head start on them with an impression with the company, and for them to really start investing in you and maybe paying for your education. Maybe there's a program where they send you away for 2 years to go to college and then bring you back after you've finished it. There are things like that out there. You don't want to be. When I joined the Air Force, and I went to 2 stops out in Falcon Air Force Base at the time. It's now Schriever Air Force Base. And I get there and I meet the guy that's doing my job, but for the other crew. And I meet him, and he outranks me just a little bit by a couple of stripes because he already had education. He had an English degree. He didn't just have an English degree. He had a master's degree. And he was making about $40 more than me as an 18-year-old. But he was like 28. We were making essentially the same money, doing the exact same job, because he went to college, got a master's degree because he wanted to be a writer. And he ended up having to do the same thing I was doing. You don't want to be like this editor that just quit DC Comics Black Label. When I was reading her experience, they said she came in as an assistant editor, just like you did with Milestone. Guess what she came in with? A PhD as an assistant editor. Can you imagine the amount of debt that they had and the position, the amount of pay, the compensation to take an assistant editor job with a PhD? You don't want to be that person.
No, you don't want to do that. But
you never get out of that.
Look. When I was at Milestone, the bump from editorial intern to editorial assistant was the fact that I interned there for about 6 to 8 months. When I left, I showed up on time, I did my job, I contributed, and then I got a call back saying, we want you to come on as paid part-time staff. That's how that worked. And I didn't need a degree at the time. They required a degree. And the only thing that happened was that, and again, like I said, sometimes I feel like Charlie Brown here, is that again, about the same time that I'm losing opportunity at the Young and Rubicam thing, what happens, of course, at the same time is the great crash. The great crash, as I've recounted before, the great crash at Complex. Because I sent my resume around to Marvel DC, one or two other places. Like I said, the guy from Marvel said, look, this is a great resume. It looks like you've really been on it for the last couple of years, but we just lucky to keep our jobs around here. Sometimes timing is everything, but it's like Oprah Winfrey said it, and I think it's one of the best ways to say it is that luck is basically a combination of preparation and opportunity. And so all we're saying here is, other than the government needs to stay out of the student loan business, is that preparation is key. It's how you prepare. Prepare in a way that's cost effective, prepare in a way that's not going to indebt you for the rest of your life because you signed a wrong contract. When opportunity comes along, you'll be able to run with it, or opportunities. And the other thing I'll say to anybody out there, because this was also, again, a lot of the experience that I have and a lot of that I try to share with everyone on the channel just comes from the way you don't want to learn is trial and error. You want to learn by talking to other people who's getting the experience.
So everybody else's error.
Understanding something. You want to learn about somebody else's error. But it's like when I wasn't paying my student loans for a bit because, honestly, I was like, screw this, couldn't afford it. Didn't get the jobs that I was supposed to get that was supposed to help you pay back for it. But, I got to the point where I was like, okay, let me go ahead and do these loans. So they said, it's no problem, Dargan, come in. We're going to help you rehabilitate your loans. So how they helped me to rehabilitate my loans was they introduced me to a concept that I saw it, but I didn't look it up before I signed it online, called capitalized interest. So what I didn't learn so afterwards was that capitalized interest meant is that whatever interest, when you weren't paying the loans or whatever fees and all the good stuff that you would accumulate or accrue before you were being rehabilitated, it now became a part of your capital balance. Yeah. And now you move forward to paying the interest on the loan. And the thing is that, and nobody said, just Dargan. And I was a little bit older at this point, and I could have used a dictionary or Siri, and we didn't have Siri back then, but I used a dictionary and looked it up, or asked somebody to look over the contract for me, or look over the agreement for me. And they might have said, you realize this section right here is going to kill you. But you take people at their word. So when it comes to another video, this is why I don't dogpile on people who get victimized by predators. But it's like I'm speaking from experience when I say you have to up your game in terms of knowing what you're signing, why you're signing it, and how does it work in your interest. Those people on the other side of the table offering you a contract, they're looking out for their interests. You have to, for the sake of your sanity, your soul, and for future generations, you have to be as savvy as they are, and to say, look, this is what you're offering, and I don't want this. And you really have to have the courage, the moral, intellectual, and ethical courage to say no thanks, to walk away from the deal. Warren Buffett said, the sign of a good deal is everybody gets something out of it. And you getting an education is not necessarily you getting something out of it. It's the product that you and the other party are negotiating over. But the point is that you get something out of it that benefits you. What's your return on this investment? Because they know what their return on the investment is. Yeah. You have to be more savvy. And there's too many Gen Xers, too many people walking around who at this point were all bitter enough and looking to vicariously get revenge through you. that if you give us a call, drop an email or a direct message, we'll tell you this is what you need to do. It's like, if I couldn't make it, kid, but maybe you can.
Absolutely. When you think about this, when you're going to set up these loans with the school, they know the loan's guaranteed. They don't care at that point whether you get anything out of it, because they're getting their money, and you're going to go into their classroom with 180 people in it, depending on the size of the university. I can tell you from experience, being 28 years old and completely debt free was one of the best feelings of my life. I basically maintained that all the way into my 40s, and it's a beautiful thing. And I think everybody, if you look at that, and I definitely want to do a discussion about debt in general, Gervais, which is different than this and be a little bit more expansive. Yep. But it's a beautiful thing. If you saddle yourself under too much college loan debt, it's almost impossible to get out of it. If you're not a doctor, if you're not a lawyer, if you're not in certain vocations.
Even if you are a doctor.
Yeah, if you are a doctor, 8 years of student loans is a lot of money, because you got to go become a doctor, then you got to become a specialist.
Yep. And look, and the thing is, I unlike you, did not get into my 40s without debt, and prospects are looking good enough that I'll be able to get out of it, but it'll only be through blind luck and the grace of God if I get out of it. At the very least, hard work, and if I don't pass on to the next generation. But yeah, you can do this thing called life, and that doesn't have to be a part of it or a crushing part of it. You can do this thing called life, but a lot of this is going to come down to and I would advise anybody, if you don't know the basics of it, and I would advise you, if you're a parent, to teach your kids the basics of it, because that's what we're doing with my daughters now, is teach them the basics of personal finance. Teach them, like I tell my girls all the time, it's like, this is what it is. Now for us, we're Christians, so as you tithe, you save, you pay, enjoy. It's no more simple than that. Your housing allowance, if you can control in this crazy environment, shouldn't be more, and some people say it shouldn't even be this much, 30% of your pay. Your debt shouldn't be more than 10%.
Not if you have a car, it should be 30%.
Yeah, exactly. It shouldn't be 30%. There's these little rules that should be guidelines that it should be everybody. And don't go by what McDonald's tells you, because those people are just crazy. When they came up their little budget allocation, we talk about real budgets. And sometimes what it requires is that, like you were saying before, Wes, sometimes you might have to stay with your parents at home, a little bit longer than you intended. It doesn't mean you can walk out the door at 18 or 22 or 24. And in those situations, all I say is I tell my kids, don't be a hindrance, don't be a burden, be a boon. help out around the house, do whatever you can, do things that can be considered as sort of an in-kind expense. Like, your parents are basically covering your rent. So make sure you mow the lawn, run groceries, and do all this other kind of stuff. But there are ways to get through this. And adults should be there for young people coming behind them to help to give them the right guidance and the appropriate support to get them to a point where it's debt-free. Just because it happened to you doesn't mean it was right. It just means it happened. And it doesn't mean it should happen to somebody else out of some punitive thing. So, and I agree, for the most part, I would say, yeah, people should pay their debts. But I'd say at the same time, if that's the case, then we all should be anti-bankruptcy court and all that. But until I see that movement happening, I want my right to discharge my student loan debt through bankruptcy back. Because I pay a price for going through bankruptcy.
Student loans should go through the same system as every other kind of loan. The bank should have to look at it and say, is this worth the investment? Are they going to be able to pay me back? I'll give you that too. And be able to say, you know what?
You screw up,
no, their degree program is a gender study degree. You really want this?
Well, that's true.
Go work. That's how you get it.
So you'll give them all a scarlet letter? Yeah. He said he wants to go into, what is it? What's the bird watching thing? Ontology or something like that? Get what you deserve.
If you want to go into bird watching, there's a park down the street, guaranteed. And also, I do want to mention this at the end. As somebody who started a YouTube channel and had no experience doing any of this stuff, I was just, and I know you're gonna be like, "Well, Wes, your channel sucks." I get that the production isn't where I get paid, but you can learn all this stuff through YouTube. You can learn all the necessary skills to do all this stuff that are essentially given away on YouTube.
Yeah, no, it's not typical time. Like one guy was saying, it's people, they spend like $5 to $15 to do a thumbnail when it just takes some time to learn their stuff. I said, look, man, it's like sometimes there's a time factor. Like I had to when I was doing one of the Facebook ads for when we had Ken on, and my marketing consultant, he sends me the software to do it. I think it's called GIMP or GM, something like that. And I'm sitting there, and it took me like, because I didn't get a graphic design degree. And I'm sitting there for like about an hour 15 trying to figure out how to get this logo. I said, you know what? Just take the $10. Take the $10. I got things to do. No, but I figured it out. I got through it. I'm going to spend some time doing it. But you're right. It is. The one thing that I think has become a real equalizer is the internet. I think it is channels like this. We did another video talking about the whole Action Lab thing, and it's like, and I really hope people take what we're saying to heart, because especially if you heard me say this before, as the creative arts industry is going to be greatly impacted by blockchain technology, this NFT thing. If you think people are getting ripped off now, guys, if you don't step up your game in terms of understanding how stuff works, this NFT thing is going to be, people are going to get murdered when it comes to compensation and intellectual property rights and things along that. If you don't really have a good grasp of how this technology works and what it means for you, it's going to affect almost every industry. You're talking about middlemen getting wiped out left and right, and it's really going to come down to how well do you know the stakes involved, as opposed to the party on the other side of the table. So it's like, take advantage of this great thing called the internet. Take advantage of people who put it, like Wes said, people who putting stuff on YouTube for free, because they're sharing with you their life experience, their errors, so you don't make the same errors. Learn from our errors as opposed to learning from them on your own. So I agree with you that 1,000%. Yeah.
All right, Gevian, I appreciate you sharing your story. We certainly got to our points in life through very different tracks, but it sounds like we're basically on the same page.
Absolutely.
Look out for yourself.
Life is life. Look out. There you go. Look out for yourself. That's right.